Wow, I actually did it. I'm in math. This is awesome. It's okay, nothing can hurt me here. Wait a second. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Lost in Math. Today we're learning how to solve quadratic equations by graphing. Every quadratic function has a related quadratic equation. A quadratic equation is an equation that can be written in the standard form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a does not equal 0. If we look at our standard form of a quadratic function and our standard form of a quadratic equation, they're very similar, just we replace y with 0. So standard form of quadratic equation, y equals 0. So today we're learning how to solve quadratic equations by graphing, and I want to find out when y equals 0. Y equals 0 on a graph along the x-axis. So to solve quadratic equations by graphing, I'll graph the related function and then find out where my graph crosses the x-axis. So I'll be finding the zeros of a function. Card in the top right-hand corner for a refresher on how to find zeros of a quadratic function. So to solve a quadratic equation by graphing, we have 3 steps. We write our equation as a related function, graph the function, and then find the zeros of the function. If we recall, when we're finding zeros, we can either have 2 zeros, 1 zero, or no zeros, depending on how many times it crosses the x-axis. So for our answer, we should either get 2 answers, 1 answer, or no answers. So at the bottom of our notes, let's try our first example. So our first example asks us to solve the equation 2x squared minus 2 equals 0. We're going to do this by graphing. So first we want to make sure it's written in standard form of a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And it is. It equals 0, so we're good on that. Next we want to write the related function. The related function to this equation would be y equals 2x squared minus 2. To write the related function, after it's written in standard form, we just replace 0 with y, and I like it to be y equals, not equals y, so y equals 2x squared minus 2. Step 2, so we graph this function we just found, y equals 2x squared minus 2. Card in the top right-hand corner for a refresher on how to graph quadratic functions, but find the axis symmetry, find the vertex, find other points, connect them with the smooth curve. So here is the work on how to do that. So my axis of symmetry was at 0. My vertex was at 0, negative 2. I had to find 2 other points to get 5 total. So my first point I found was at 1, 0, and this also got me a point at negative 1, 0. And then I got another point at 2, 6, which also got me a point at negative 2, 6. 5 dots total, connected it with a parabola, graph. So step 3, find the zeros. The zeros of the function were there and there at x equals 1 and x equals -1. When I'm done, I should always check. I was finding the solutions to the equation 2x squared minus 2 equals 0. So when I plug a 1 and a -1 in for x, I should get out 0, the solution of my equation. So I'll check that really fast. And they both work. I get out a 0 for x equals 1, and I get out a 0 for x equals -1. So those are the two zeros, the two solutions to that quadratic equation 2x squared minus 2 equals 0. So this lesson is pretty similar to graphing a quadratic function. We just find our related quadratic function, graph it. If there are zeros, find them, identify them. Those are our solutions. So on the back of our notes, there's a practice problem. So why don't you take a moment and try and solve that. First thing we notice on our practice problem is that it's not written in standard form of a quadratic equation. Standard form, it has to equal 0. This one equals 4. So I got two ways I can fix this. Option A, subtracting 4 from both sides. Then I'd have negative x squared minus 4x minus 4 equals 0. Standard form, check. I could also move my negative x squared and negative 4x over. To do that, I would add x squared to both sides and add 4x to both sides. So I'd end up with 0 equals x squared plus 4x plus 4, or x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. I'm going to graph this second way I did it. It doesn't matter. Whichever way you do it, both equations will have the same zeros. But if I can, I like to stay positive. So I'm going to solve x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. So quickly, here's our work finding our axis of symmetry and our vertex and our other points. So we end up with this parabola here, and it looks like our answer is at x equals -2. That appears to be our only zero. If you had graphed negative x squared minus 4x minus 4 equals 0, you would have ended up with this parabola. But as you can see, they both have the same 0, which is all we were looking for, the solution to our equation, the zeros. So they both have our same answer, x equals -2. We can check it, and when we plug a -2 into our equation, so it worked. So that wraps up our notes on solving quadratic equations by graphing. We find the related function, graph it, find the zeros of that function, and those zeros will be the solutions to our quadratic equation. So know how to graph and know how to find zeros. And that's all I got. Bye guys. See you next time. Card in the top right hand with Y, and we're done. We're not done. We're just getting started. X squared minus 2 equals 0. Step 1, we want to write the related function. I'm going to say that thing. So when I plug in a 2, negative x squared minus 4x equals 4. So why don't you try and graph and solve this problem of x equals -2. Those will be our solutions to the equation. So yeah, bye guys. I don't like that ending. One more time. Your solutions to the quadratic equation. That's all there is to it. So good luck on your worksheet. Not everyone's doing a worksheet, just us. So that wraps up our notes on solving quadratic equations by graphing. We find our... Just the end!